Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Welcome to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. This week with myself, Dave Robinson, as your host, joined by my good friend and AEW tag team partner, Parker Hamlet, to discuss this week's AEW Dynamite. Parker, how you doing, man?
We're in a different little audio setup here, ready to talk all things Dynamite. I am normally a collider myself, but here we are talking the good old Wednesday night Dynamite, the elite show as it is always perceived as. Definitely excited to get this thing started, because honestly I thought this was a really solid Dynamite, and I feel like that's the first time I can honestly say that in quite some time. So excited to talk about all of it. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it.
Yeah, I'm going to start things off differently. I'm going to give my rating right at the start. So I thought this was a 9 out of 10 Dynamite. I thought it was great. I think it was really good going into obviously All In at the weekend. It was a proper go-home show that really kind of brought some emphasis to the main storylines, the majority of the storylines, to be honest, going into the show. So I think there was a lot of good finishing touches. Before we dive into our review, just want to send out best wishes to our friend and our co-host, Adam Cousins. Adam's going through some health issues at the minute, and I'm sure he'll update everybody when he's back as to what they are. And yeah, things are hopefully going in the right direction for him now. Ad, thoughts are with you, mate, and get well soon. We'll do what we can here to keep this train rolling and keep it on the tracks. And another shout out, obviously sad news in regards to Terry Funk, his recent passing. He was 79, obviously a legend in wrestling, an absolute Hall of Famer. I saw a lot of Terry Funk in his WCW run towards the end of the company's run. So that was my kind of main Terry Funk memories. So best wishes to his family and rest in peace, Terry. We're going to dive into this week's Dynamite. It came from Georgia, a place called Duluth in Georgia, Parker. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I wasn't. Obviously heard of Georgia. Not sure it's AEW's first time there, but this was a hot crowd this week. And we started off with a hot angle. Not so much of a match as it was an all-out brawl between the Elite, Kenny Omega of the Young Bucks, and Bullet Club Gold. Parker, what did you think about how we opened this week's Dynamite up?
Honestly, David, I was a big fan of this, and I definitely don't fault you for opening at the gate saying this was a 9 out of 10 Dynamite for you. I feel like things really just haven't been super quality as of the last maybe month, definitely ever since the inception of Collision as a whole. I feel like Dynamite's really been lacking in general. So I was very big on how this Dynamite opened up. You know, honestly, sometimes I feel like it's okay to kind of lean in that, sports entertainment department, and I feel like that's really what they did here. I mean, obviously, these gentlemen are going to have to save something for Sunday at Wembley for 80,000 people, right? So with that being said, I mean, I definitely can't fault them for not going with the traditional match here. We get a huge brawl. I thought we saw some great stuff between Omega, Jay White, the Guns, the Bucks. Obviously, Bushi and Hangman not getting involved, but like I said, they got to save something for Sunday. I thought this was a great way to kind of open the show, let everybody get their shit in, so to speak. And, in general, I thought this was a really fun way to just kind of open up the episode. And I was very satisfied with it. Most of the time when stuff kind of goes to a no contest, I'm left a little bit depleted because I almost feel like I got kind of robbed of a wrestling match. But in reality, I feel like everybody kind of got their shit in nonetheless. And this was a pretty fun way to open the show and kind of left you wanting more in regards to this, 6-man tag we got heading into Sunday.
Definitely. As I said earlier, just kind of putting the finishing touches on the match for me. Obviously, we saw Takeshita attack Kenny. Kenny went for the one-winged angel. Takeshita avoided that. FTR once again saved the Young Bucks, which we'll get onto a little bit later. Juice Robinson laid out the referee, but the referee tried to take the chair off him. So I kind of, it made a lot of sense to me. Some people might have looked at that and like, is this match going on? Obviously, the bell never rang, but I thought it was it was chaotic, but it was perfectly chaotic in my opinion.
Bingo. Perfect level of chaos is honestly the best way to describe this entire thing. You could argue it felt a little bit prolonged, but at the end of the day, I felt like it was more so just showcase all these gentlemen and, kind of what they're all bringing in their, individual aspects into this big 6-man tag match. And, something we kind of talked about, David, constantly was just the whole, Kenny and Jay White sharing the ring for the first time. And we've been teased with that in AEW so far when Jay White first debuted, kind of alluding to the fact that, he would hold Bullet Club down. You've had Adam Cole kind of mention he would hold Bullet Club down. So kind of our first time stateside seeing Jay White and Kenny Omega go face to face and kind of go at it. And I'm all for it. I mean, I kind of like the tribalism aspect within Bullet Club or different generations of Bullet Club, and seeing this stuff kind of get, the mythos of this kind of getting explored on AEW TV, I think is good for business. And I like a lot of things on this card, David. I feel like this did nothing but help the stock of a lot of these matches heading into Sunday at Wembley.
Yeah, there was some nice touches by Excalibur as well on commentary in regards to the history between Kenny and Jay White. So that plays into the match as well at the weekend. So yeah, this was great. It was followed up by Renee Paquette backstage. Renee definitely earned her money this week. She was in a lot of segments, conducting a lot of business.
You got that right. Holy shit.
Yeah, she was everywhere. And first up, she was with MJF. And he was talking about the match and saying about how important it is and how he goes on to become like not a god, but a real big name in the industry should he defeat Adam Cole and retain his title at All In. I thought this was great, like top level work as usual from MJF. And I was then intrigued to hear Adam Cole's response later. I thought MJF did a great job here as always, Parker.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that about Renee. That was one of my biggest takeaways from this episode, to be honest with you, was the fact that Renee Paquette had so much to do. And I mean, honestly, if we're being honest here, this Dynamite in general is just one big advertisement for All In. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. And, especially with segments like this. And, we didn't get to sit down with Adam Cole and MJF together. We got them individually. So you kind of got a good chance to gauge what these guys were bringing in regards to story aspect going into Sunday. And MJF, in my opinion, is definitely portrayed right now as the vulnerable babyface who trusts his friend. And we've seen the same trick 1,000 times with MJF, right? I mean, he made himself look vulnerable with Punk. He made himself look vulnerable with Chris Jericho. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And I've had this conversation with quite a few individuals, David, and I kind of want to have it with you as well. Where do you see this going? Because I'm going to be honest with you. It's been telegraphed from the start, in my opinion. I think this is a situation where, obviously MJF wants to go into the bidding war of 2024 as the AEW World Heavyweight Champion. I don't think if he drops it to Adam Cole here, that's even out of the question. But I think the story that they are definitely trying to tell here is one of Adam Cole is the original bad guy, and he outsmarted the vulnerable MJF, who's doing something that is outside the realm of what is expected of his character. And I don't think that, I mean, honestly, there's a scenario here where you could put the belt right back on Max, even if Adam Cole wins at Wembley. But you have to look at the trajectory of Adam Cole here. I mean, this is a guy who 6 months ago, we didn't even know if he was ever going to wrestle again. And now, Tony Khan in a situation where he could put the AEW World title on him, I think he's going to pull the trigger. I mean, you have to look at, if AEW was a cross, Adam Cole has bared it better than most people. And, Adam Cole put a lot of himself on the line to come to AEW, and, it's paid handsomely for him. I mean, he's proudly endorsed the video game. He's embraced every single storyline he's been in, good or bad. So I think this is a situation where you reward Adam Cole for all he has done for AEW, and you don't want to ever be in a situation where you can never put the world title on him. So I think they're in a situation where they can tell a really unique story, and watching Max, of course, cut that really great babyface promo kind of made me double down on that take of, I honestly do think Adam Cole is going over at Wembley, especially once we kind of get to what happened with Roderick Strong, the Kingdom, and then especially once we get to Adam Cole's promo itself. But I got to ask you, as we're kind of in the closing moments of this storyline, or at least this chapter of it, who do you think it comes out the villain at Wembley after seeing that segment?
You see, it's so interesting in terms of all the little details involved in this. And one of the things, obviously, we'll talk about on, if we do some kind of prediction show in the next few days for All In, we've got to talk about the tag match as well, the Ring of Honor title match. And the results of that could massively dictate my feelings toward the main event. I'm really unsure. I think yes, you're absolutely right. The most logical thing for me as a wrestling fan, I suppose, if I had to kind of put any money down on and say what I think is going to happen, I'd be saying that Roderick Strong and the Kingdom are helping Adam Cole in some way, shape, or form to turn on MJF and beat him for the title. But I've also got a strong feeling that I can see MJF retaining, and I don't know how that plays into if MJF is to retain, what that does for the dynamic between Cole and MJF. If there isn't a turn from Cole, you're kind of thinking there's got to be, but we've been here before. We thought there was a turn coming a few weeks back. I know All In's and obviously the grandest stage, and it's going to be the place to do it. But I could see the match going either way, and the other raising the other one's hand in victory, and this storyline continues for a little while. So I'm really conflicted. But if I had to give you an answer, I'd be saying that Adam Cole's walking out with his title on Sunday night. I don't know if that is the same way you feel, in terms of how that goes down involving the Kingdom and Roderick Strong, or whether that's a bit of a misdirect.
I mean, and I think the misdirection is another aspect of the conversation too, because you can make the argument that, AEW doesn't really make things painfully obvious in the past. And, they do like to pump fake their audience, ever so often. I mean, that's been a big allure for us in the hardcore wrestling audience. But at the same time, I mean, seeing that, kind of disruptive side of Adam Cole and that sit down with Renee Paquette kind of was a reminder of how volatile he really is as a heel. And I think people forget that, he's just, while he's such a great organic babyface, he is a dastardly heel. And what better story to tell here than have him come out on Dynamite the following Wednesday and be like, I was tricking you the whole time and you fell for it because you're an idiot. I was doing this. You were watching my wrestling tapes. I was on that list for a reason. You looked up to me. And, sometimes the most dangerous devil is the devil that you know. And for MJF's biggest vice in his title reign to be that, he was basically outdone at his own game, I think is good storytelling. It doesn't make MJF look weak in any capacity. It excels Adam Cole up the card, finally gives him the AEW world title run that I definitely think he deserves before he, maybe isn't a full-time performer anymore. And I'm not trying to say that like Adam Cole's a dinosaur or anything, but at the same exact time, we have to look at it like, he's one freak injury away from having to hang up the boots. And, I think this is one of those things you got to strike the iron while it's hot. And I don't think you hurt MJF in this situation. If anything, you give him the ability to show, Western audiences and Tony Khan, especially a man who's looking to pay him long term, that he can be not only a phenomenal heel, but also a phenomenal babyface. So I'm going to be honestly very disappointed if the story doesn't flesh out the way that I think it's going to. Don't get me wrong, David. I know this is really long-winded, but I know these two can go out there and have a good traditional match. And MJF can be the same dastardly heel he's always been, but I really do think they have a chance here. And I think they're going to pull the trigger on telling us a story we've never seen before with Max.
Yeah, and to your point, pulling the trigger on Adam Cole, he has lost some big matches since he's been in AEW. He lost to Adam Page when he challenged for the title. He didn't lose to Max as such, but he didn't walk away with the title in their first match. And there's been other matches as well where Adam Cole's come up short. He's won some big matches in AEW. He won the first Owen tournament as well. But as you say, if he keeps losing these big matches on the grande scale and there is no kind of, any kind of turn on Sunday night, that kind of affects the stock in Adam Cole, to your point.
Most definitely. And anybody who doesn't think that that's a case really hasn't been paying attention. I feel like they've kind of put him in the main event scene so much now that, eventually he does have to win. I mean, I feel the same way about Bryan Danielson. I mean, the next time he's near the AEW World Championship, I mean, this is a situation where you kind of have to put it on him. There's only so many ways you can go and trajectories you can go with the character and the narrative before it just kind of feels like they're not a credible threat anymore. And for Adam Cole to kind of return to his roots and be that bastard that we all know that it's kind of what made him famous, Panama Playboy, all that good stuff. And I think it's just going to basically turn the storyline on its head. And the audience, even though I'm sitting here and expecting and making it sound like it's already a foregone conclusion, the audience at Wembley is going to be awestruck by how they do it. And I just hope when they do, it's unpredictable. It's not blaringly obvious. I mean, I've even envisioned situations where it's like a pre-match beatdown where they go for the pose, and Adam Cole hits a last shot on him while he's kneeled down and just takes advantage of a wounded MJF. I mean, I just think a big part of MJF's character arc is kind of being purified of his sins, so to speak. And one of those would be him basically being stabbed in the back because he was vulnerable. And I think this is just a great way to extend this feud and add some depth to MJF's character. So if it sounds long-winded and impassioned, it's mainly because I feel like there's a story here that, really doesn't get told a lot in professional wrestling, and especially modern professional wrestling. So I'm very excited to see where they go with this. Hope they don't let me down.
See, my last thing on this, and then we'll move on to the next match. But it's interesting that Adam Cole was the one that set up the tag team match and not MJF.
That too.
I mean, you would think that they would save the big moment for the main card. In saying that, there's been a lot of emphasis on telling people to tune in for 0 Hour. So they could do something there where MJF's weakened, and is he going to be able to go in the main event? And, the fact that he's not 100%, that could play into the outcome of the match as well. So as you say, there's a lot of interesting things they can still do, even though we perhaps feeling that the end result of Adam Cole holding the title aloft is the one that we'll see play out at Wembley on Sunday night.
And I won't be disappointed with either outcome, if we're being honest. But at the same time, I feel like this is a situation where you can get a lot of mileage out of this, and it doesn't need to just be a summer fling in regards to a storyline. So cross our fingers.
Cool, man. Cool. We'll move on now to the next match. And it was Jon Moxley back in singles action up against Rey Fenix in what was a great match for me, a great television match as well. They gave us just enough, but not too much, and a great finish with Rey Fenix kicking out of the Death Rider from the top rope, middle rope, top rope.
Avalanche Death Rider, paradigm shift, whatever you call it.
Yeah, absolute false finish, wasn't it? It got me, absolutely. I thought that was over. Rey kicked out of that, which made him look great, but he did ultimately succumb to the Bulldog choke. The Parker, it was the post-match, though, really, that kind of set the scene for the weekend. This was a great little match. We'd heard in the week that Rey Fenix was potentially not going to be able to wrestle at All In because of visa issues. At the minute, he's trying to get residency in the US, so that in some ways affected his travel plans. I don't think he's able to leave the country. So this was basically an angle to write Rey out of that match. We later learned that it was going to be 5-on-5, but in the aftermath of the match, there was a bit of a melee, and we saw the return of Santana and Ortiz. This was a great moment, particularly for Santana, who got the big entrance. He got the theme, and he came out and he kicked some ass. So this makes a lot of sense for me that those two guys are the two that are joining the BCC. I think a team that was already kind of going down in AEW folklore, and they were there from the start, and they were big kind of, particularly early in the early days of AEW, they had some big matches. But this kind of gave them that little kickstart. So I'm just interested to hear your take on it, really, and whether it was the two that you predicted.
Definitely not the two I predicted, but I'm definitely glad that I was wrong. I'm not one of those guys that needs to be right all the time, like yourself, David. We love to be happily surprised, especially with anything involving AEW, the IWC, any of that nature, because we always think we're a bunch of wise guys trying to figure everything out, right? So with that being said, I didn't see this coming, and it was really cool to see two AEW originals kind of reprise their roles back on AEW television. I thought it was interesting. Sammy Guevara was wearing an Inner Circle jacket during his segment with Jericho in the show as well. So we see two Inner Circle OGs kind of reemerging on TV. We'd heard some stuff about contract disputes, whatever have you, but these two guys, like you said, workhorses from the very inception of AEW, and I was very excited to see them on my TV screen. I think one of them had a lock and a sock and absolutely busted Pentagon in the face with it. I mean, it looked brutal. I mean, Pentagon looked like he was actually hurt. Like I don't know. It's still real to me, damn it. Or that looked like it hurt to me at least. So the authenticity was automatically added. I think these two are a great addition, and I think that they're going to make the match that much better. Makes me wonder if it was a situation where if Rey Fenix was able to make All In, would we even see them on the TV screen? Was this like a smash in case of emergency kind of situation from Tony Khan? Are these two still on the rocks in AEW? I hope that's not the case. I hope this is one of those situations where something bad happens, but something really good comes out of it, and I think that's what we're dealing with here. And it's kind of funny. The entire like concept of this match was, all right, Ray, we're gonna beat the shit out of you because you can't come to London. And man, did Jon Moxley beat the shit out of that guy? Wow, ripping his mask up. You already mentioned the Avalanche, Paradigm Shift, Death Rider, whatever theme he's playing. I guess they'll switch up the name, but ultimately, I thought this was a really fun TV match. I think out of all the matches on Dynamite, this got the most time for sure. And I think it was a couple commercial breaks in between, but I mean, standard run of the mill Moxley match, but I don't really think that's an insult. If anything, I think it's a good thing. So I thought this match served its purpose, and looks like Ray will be watching All In like the rest of us, but definitely a lot more bloody and a lot more bruised up. And glad to see Santana and Ortiz back on TV.
Yeah, I was interested as well. Obviously, this was going to be a 6-on-6, so I was thinking about who's going to be the sixth man for the BCC, and I thought maybe Danielson would be maybe a light fitness check. So it doesn't look like, well, it's a 5-on-5 now, so whoever it was isn't going to appear as part of the team. Have you had any updates on Danielson? Are you expecting him to be part of All In at all, or do you think he's going to miss out?
So it's funny you say that. You know, I'm very diligent, as some of you may know. I get a little bit in the weeds, whether it be sports, wrestling. I mean, I think wrestling is a sport, but that's a conversation for another day. But as far as Bryan Danielson is concerned, I foresee us hearing Final Countdown at Wembley. Maybe that's a little bit of a bold prediction, if you will. Jot that down. I say that because it's being reported that he is traveling, and even if it's just in a commentary role, I think he's going to be on this program in some capacity. Because I mean, why would he not be? You know, I mean, if you can find a way to fit him in there, you fit him in there. A lot like you, I was hoping they would just include him in Stampede and just, you know, maybe gimmick him in there into in a role where he's not exactly, you know, becoming the brunt of the punishment, so to speak. But Bryan Danielson also strikes me as a guy where he either wants to go 100% or he doesn't want to go at all. You know, I mean, I mean, if anybody here is questioning the commentary ability of Bryan Danielson, definitely go check out the Cruiserweight Classic. I think back in 2016. Bryan Danielson brings a lot from a commentary standpoint. I mean, he's done great stuff on AEW programming, especially when he's talking about Wheeler Yuta. That shit's absolutely hilarious. So I think he's going to be there, David, and I think he's probably going to be like us with a mic in front of his face. So I think we're going to hear old Danielson's music hit at some point at Wembley.
Cool. Well, up next was a contract signing, and I have never been a fan of contract signing.
Segment of the night, hands down.
Exactly.
Hands down.
That's exactly what I was going to go into. I mean, there's been the odd one that's been pretty good, but I've got this automatic, kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to the words contract signing because I've seen so many bad ones over the years, I suppose. This was not only was this segment of the night, and this was some of Jericho's best work, certainly on the microphone. I would say this year. I would say one of the. I don't know. Is it too much of a stretch to say this was one of the best Dynamite segments of all time? I don't know.
I really don't think so, because I'll tell you this. I don't know that we've said this on the show, on the record, but I think everybody at HCTB, Andy, Adam included, have felt like the build to this match has been extremely lackluster. I mean, you have the involvement of Don Callis, and I know we haven't gotten to this segment specifically yet, but I mean, I feel so passionate about this segment because, to be honest with you, it really drew me in like nothing else on the show did. And with a live audience, you know, basically the entire mission statement of this was Jericho and Ospreay go out there and sell this match that pretty much has no build.
Yeah.
And they really flew Will over there for a good reason, because they had a very good plan coming into it. You talk about this being one of Jericho's biggest promos of the year, best promos of the year, if you will. I think this is one of the best promos, if not the best promo I've ever seen Will Ospreay cut in his entire life. And I mean, you know, real life aspect to it. I mean, he's going to be in front of his home country, his people, his wife, his daughter. And what I loved about it was, you know, it was kind of a, let me remind you who you're talking to kind of thing in regards to like the hierarchy of professional wrestling right now, because Will Ospreay mentioned in this promo 6 months out from his contract being up with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and there are going to be bidders for him. I mean, he is undoubtedly one of the best professional wrestlers in the world right now. He proved it at Forbidden Door, he proved it at Wrestle Kingdom, and he's proved it pretty much every time he's been in the ring. He mentioned that he will become the only person ever in professional wrestling history to ever defeated Kazuchika Okada, Kenny Omega, and Chris Jericho all within a span of 2 months. And, you know, I'll tell you what, if I'm Tony Khan and I had any type of number in mind for what I wanted to give Will Ospreay, after that promo, it would probably just be a blank check. So I thought this was absolutely fantastic stuff. I'm not giving all the credit to Jericho. In fact, I'd give about 80% of the credit to Will Ospreay. I mean, but it comes from that real life passion of repping your home country in your home country at the biggest professional wrestling show of all time, getting a chance to wrestle one of the biggest. I mean, if there was a Hall of Fame, just overall across the sport, I mean, Jericho's getting a yellow jacket. So you got to really look at this from Will Ospreay's point of view. And while us stateside really don't see this as a big deal for the people in England, for the people in Wembley, for Will Ospreay, this is match of a lifetime territory. And I wasn't really big on the whole, Jericho saying, "Oh, well, if I hadn't called you and told you to relax, you would have never relaxed." Like him looking out for him. I was more so impassioned by Will Ospreay's ability to kind of, talk his shit, so to speak, and really just kind of, get the U.S. audience to kind of recognize the merit of him and just how much of a threat he is to Jericho. And I kind of liked how Don Callis sold it as well as like, I'm going with the prize fighter here. I mean, you've had your moment in the sun, Chris. I'm going with one of the best in the world right here. So, I mean, it's very on theme for Don. I mean, look what he did with Kenny Omega. So I went from not giving a fraction of a shit about this to honestly just being delighted to watch this on Sunday. How about you?
Well, let me tell you this. Not only did this put the finishing touch and sell me 100% the Ospreay Jericho match on Sunday. Ospreay said during his promo that he was wrestling in India the night before, which he is. He's wrestling for Rev Pro at the Copper Box. Not only has he sold me that match, he sold me the indie match as well, because I think off the back of that, we're going to be getting tickets and going to the Rev Pro show, which we were very tempted anyway. Michael Oku, there's a lot of great stars there. Trent Seven, Mickey James. There's a number of great stars appearing the night before in London prior to All Out on Sunday. But yeah, Will Ospreay's passion and the fact that he's appearing on both nights, I thought, man, I'm going to be going to both here, and I'm sold on both matches.
Yeah, I mean, if I was anywhere close, I would probably be in the car with you, bro. So, I mean, I'm a lot like you. This got me fired up. This made me kind of think, Will Ospreay is not treating this as a consolation. And when a guy's going to go out there and put 110% into his match, into his performance, you're going to get something special, especially with a guy like Will Ospreay. And then you have to look at it from Jericho's point of view, how he kind of already acknowledged the fact that, a lot of people are kind of preying on his downfall, saying he's past his prime. Can he keep up with a guy like Will Ospreay? So I think this is a match that, 48 hours ago, I couldn't have cared less about. But now, just from seeing, kind of where they're going with the story and just kind of how fired up these two guys are, I'm just as fired up as they are. And I think this could be a match of the night contender if done properly. I mean, we've seen Jericho in there with some great performers and recent memory and kind of fumbled the bag. We already mentioned one of them, Adam Cole. So I think Jericho's got a bad taste in his mouth, and he wants to go out there and throw it down with one of the best in the world. I mean, you could argue that formula is what made AEW even a reality with him and Omega throwing down in New Japan. So I think this could be kind of Chris Jericho reminding us who the hell he is too. So, I mean, but that's of course the optimistic AEW fan in me, I guess you could argue. But I'm like you, man. Moment of the night, segment of the night, had my attention at every waking moment, and it's got me riled up for their match at All In for sure.
Yeah, and regardless of how the match goes, Jericho is going to be performing with Fozzy. So he's going to be doing his own entrance, seemingly. They're going to be playing
great
Judas.
line by Ospreay, too. Oh, my God. Whew, that was hilarious.
Yeah. And then Jericho's rebuttal was great as well, saying, this isn't a vanity project. This is bigger for me than WrestleMania. A lot of good stuff packed into this segment.
Oh, yeah. Using his pedigree, understandably so. And understanding that he doesn't have to go out there and do too much. He has a legacy, and Ospreay is of course still, making his way in the world, obviously at a great trajectory, but like he said, he's going to use Jericho as jet fuel. I love that line. And like I said, I don't know who mocked this thing up, but man, 10 out of 10, loved it.
Yeah. There's great signs, not only from the on-screen talent, but the introduction of new producers as well backstage and ex-wrestlers getting involved. I think that's starting to pay off now. As I say, a lot of good segments, and they weren't just all in-ring segments. There was great backstage segments, as we mentioned earlier. Renee had already spoken with MJF. She was sat down with Adam Cole, and he kind of left abruptly, but we touched on that earlier. But that wasn't Renee's only work tonight. She was back up after this match. But first it was Darby Allin and Nick Wayne up against the Mogul Embassy's Swerve Strickland and AR Fox, which was a bit of threw us a bit of a curveball at the end. I thought for sure that Nick Wayne was in this match to pick up the loss, basically, to kind of do the job, given the fact that, you know, his team go up against Sting and Darby at the weekend. So I thought Nick Wayne would be the one that was taking the pin. But they went in a different direction with this, which actually resulted in Nick Wayne kicking out of a number of big moves from AR Fox, avoiding the 450, rolling Fox up while Darby held Strickland's legs. And then Strickland and Prince Nana actually kicked AR Fox out of the Mogul Embassy, and he's seemingly been replaced by Brian Cage. That wasn't confirmed, and we may get an 8-man tag here. They actually brought out Luchasaurus, didn't they? But Brian Cage was still involved. So we had a great bit on the mic from Christian. He was really his strong suit, if you like. He's talking about deceased dads, which sounds horrific, but honestly, if you do it right, I think not only the stuff with Wardlow and Jungle Boy, I thought this was obviously pre-approved by Nick Wayne. This was great heel heat as well. I was very surprised by this, Parker. I don't know if you saw this coming at all or whether you expected this to take place. But yeah, this caught me by surprise.
You know, we'd kind of heard prior that there was a situation potentially where some things would get switched around. And I have to say, this entire segment almost felt like a couple weeks worth of storytelling kind of put into hyperspeed, if you will. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it definitely seemed a little bit, and for reasons we don't fully know yet. We don't know if AR Fox can't travel or whether he'll be part of Sting and Darby's team at the weekend. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. This was something that could have been played out a lot longer. It seemed a bit knee-jerk from Swerve. AR Fox had been doing pretty well, in my opinion, as part of the Mogul Embassy.
I thought so too, and I think this is another situation where we don't really. I feel like Swerve is in a situation sometimes where it's like he can't keep anything cohesive for any sustainable period of time, you know? I mean, we've seen situations here, in my opinion, David, where Swerve and AR Fox have, you know, shown great chemistry, and I was, you know, honestly very excited to kind of see this thing flush out and play out a little bit more than we got out of it. I just feel like you could have got more mileage out of this, you know? Yeah. I mean, I really do. And I think that was really my only critique with the situation, was that I feel like there was more they could have done with this. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'll say this. Christian absolutely killed it. I mean, that was absolutely hilarious. I mean, no complaints about that in any capacity. I mean, of course, obviously got permission from Nick Wayne for mentioning his deceased father. But, I mean, man, just going for the freaking throat in every aspect, Christian, every time he's got a live mic in his hand. Of course, they still do have to kind of cater to the all-out show and, you know, show that there are story beats progressing in that instance. So I think tying Christian in was kind of a way to keep the all-out card, you know, in mind as they kind of progressively move throughout all of this. So I thought as a segment, it felt pretty rushed and kind of forced in some ways, but at the same exact time, I also feel like it hit all the right spots from a storytelling standpoint too. So
yeah, and there were two lines in particular from Christian. Your father is dead. I never heard of your father, Buddy Wayne, before, so he must not have been very good. That's what he kind of opened up with. And he finished with, we all know every fatherless child needs a mentor, and there's no better mentor than the TNT champion, Christian Cage. Man, I am incredibly close with my dad. My dad's actually coming with me at the weekend for the whole weekend down at All In. I know that Nick Wayne would have pre-authorized this and said, yeah, it's cool. I'm not just sure I would be able to do the same, man. Did you think it went a little bit too far, or do you just think that is what we expect from Christian now, and there's nobody better at it than him, so give him free reign, basically, to say what he wants?
I mean, that's how I felt about it. I feel like there really is no... The gloves are, you know, kind of off when Christian's got a mic, I think is kind of his entire shtick at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at the end of the day. I mean, I think it's quality stuff he's saying. But like you said, there is a such thing, in my opinion, as low-hanging fruit. And Christian seems to grab it a lot. I really like the line by Punk when him and MJF were going head to head for their first pipe bomb. He was like, I'm really disappointed in you, Max. You come out here and you grab the lowest hanging fruit. Yeah, I feel like sometimes when things are there, you don't have to take them. But at the same time, let me play devil's advocate here. Nick Wayne's entire story is dad, 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 dad. And, I feel like that's really one of the only instances where you can kind of go to this well repeatedly and it's not too much. I feel like when he said it to Jungle Boy the first time, it was kind of insane. So, I mean, that was brutal. I mean, I didn't see that coming whatsoever. And I thought it was kind of funny how quick the crowd caught on to what he was going to say the second go around here with Nick Wayne. As soon as he mentioned his dad, the crowd was like, oh, this son of a bitch. I know exactly where he's going with this. So, yeah, it makes you wonder, the real life aspect of it. Is Christian going too far? But in 2023, man, the some of the lengths you have to go to make these people even react is kind of crazy. And I think Christian's kind of knowing he's got to be a little bit of an extremist in some instances to kind of keep his, heel persona or villain persona, feeling larger than life. So you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
Yeah. I got to agree. I think it was great. I was really entertained by it, but as I say, it just did make me think about my relationship with my own dad. And yeah, but Christian's a master, and his inclusion, or Luchasaurus's inclusion in the match, it is nothing but strengthens it, in my opinion. Up next was a women's segment, and we had Ruby Soho, who did actually issue a challenge or call out this Chris Statlander to a degree. Nothing's been set up there yet. We may see something else come off the back of that on Collision. But she faced Sky Blue in what was a great match. I think Sky Blue has got a big future, and I think that's a bit of an understatement to say. I think that's pretty obvious. She has gone on a bit of a losing streak after previously going on a bit of a winning streak. But perhaps that's just part of her education, and these kind of matches up against seasoned pros like Ruby Soho will obviously do her great in the long run. Ruby picked up the win here, and it remains to be seen whether we see her either at All In or All Out. Parker, what's your thoughts on that situation with Ruby and Chris? Would you like it to be added to the card at the weekend? We've only got one women's match at the minute in terms of the Fatal 4-Way. Is that enough, or do the women deserve another match at All In?
I mean, do I think the women deserve another match at All Out? Absolutely. Do I think they're gonna get another match at All Out? No.
Yeah. All In.
Excuse me, All In. Yeah. Correct. The point I was about to exemplify is that I think this is a match that they're building for All Out. I think Statlander will get much more of a spotlight at All Out than she would at All In. I think you're already nearing a territory where you could make an argument that All In is overbooked in regards to, like, you already got a lot of stuff going on. So adding anything else to the cards, honestly, you risk the factor of oversaturation. And, I'll play devil's advocate again. Is there oversaturation when there's only one women's match on the card? The answer is yes. That's the short answer. And the only one I'm going to give on this podcast today. But with that being said, I think these two women will be rewarded for waiting until Chicago. And I think they're going to give a great quality match. And it's going to be another great, title defense by Chris Statlander. And I think that we're seeing a scenario where the outcasts are going to dissipate. I think the cracks in the foundation start at All In. And I think we continue to see that erode going into All Out as well. I don't know how they're going to do that. You did see Toni Storm, a.k.a. Marilyn Monroe, kind of, going out there with Ruby Soho last night. I'm not like you. I was very happy to see Sky Blue back on TV. Don't really know what the circumstances are behind that, but I think right now you need to just kind of keep the women at the Fatal 4-Way. I wish we lived in a perfect world where they could get more of a showcase, but unfortunately we live in the real world. So I think All Out is where we'll see these two, being Chris Statlander and Ruby Soho, finally clash.
Cool. Renee was back next, and she was with Roddy Strong as well as the Kingdom. And Roddy said at the end that he thinks at the end of the night we'll see the real MJF and the real Adam Cole.
Now, is that not vindication? Is that not proof of this is going exactly where I think it's going? I mean, really, like, I hate to cut you off, but realistically, I mean, the real Adam Cole is a fucking scumbag. The real MJF is a scumbag, but Adam Cole's got him acting out of character. And, I mean, we got we'll get to the Adam Cole segment, but I thought
It's interesting,
Roderick,
though,
it's almost
because
like they told him go out there and deliver that line. I was like, all right, man, just don't make it too obvious. And he, of course, did the generic white guy thing of making it painfully obvious.
yeah, but at the same time, who is the real MJF? Because we've been conditioned as AEW fans to think MJF is the devil. I mean, he calls himself the devil. But is that just a facade? Is he actually quite vulnerable, which we've obviously learned about over the past, and the fact that he's never had a real friend? It could be interpreted a couple of different ways. So that it just adds the intrigue for me. I know I agree with what you're saying. It seems pretty apparent to kind of, I don't know, marks, call us whatever you want. Inside, we've watched wrestling for a long time, so we deserve to give our opinion out. If that's the way we think things are going, but there is kind of wiggle room there to kind of redirect. So it's just, we've already discussed it, and we'll mention it again shortly. But this was another great little addition to the week's card for me. And on top of that, and speaking of a great addition. We had the Acclaim come out next, and they will look very differently to how they normally come out. No theme, no rap. They come out. They called out the House of Black. They were kind of their
These boys meant business.
Yeah,
no bullshit rap. We're not calling out politicians or pop culture celebrities. We're here to kick ass and chew bubble gum. We're all out of bubble gum.
Yeah, and talking of kicking ass, we saw the return of Daddy Ass, who made his return. It was a great
no daddy ass.
He wasn't daddy ass. No, as he let us know that at the weekend they were challenging for the trios titles, but they wouldn't be facing Daddy Ass, and they Acclaimed. They would be facing somebody who he thought was long gone, and that was the Attitude Era's very own Badass Billy Gunn. Parker, again, this was another great segment. It was obvious we were going to get to this point. I perhaps thought that it may not happen at the weekend. It was possibly going to happen maybe at the special at Arthur Ashe, maybe at All Out. But in what is already a stacked card, we're getting another match, a trios title match, which kind of belongs on the card. We're not getting a TNT title match. We're not getting a TBS title match, and we're not getting an international title match. So I feel a trios title match won't be out of place on the card, and it's perfectly justified. What did you think of this segment, and what did you think about the announcement of the match to be added to the card at the weekend?
I love it, because here's the thing. In reality, we were in a situation, right, David, where we were talking about All In being basically one giant house show. And what happens at house shows? Honestly, just a bunch of really hype multi-man tag matches with all your biggest personas and stars, right? So House of Black being Trios champion and not being on the All In card felt like blasphemy. But then again, you've got All Out, a week later. So I feel like you also had some leeway there, just like you did with like what we were just talking about the women. But Tony Khan, knowing that if he puts the trio titles on these guys in Wembley, they're going to get an absolutely monstrous reaction. I think he knows what he's doing here. Obviously, we've talked about the Acclaim. We've mentioned that they're the best homegrown product that AEW has to date, and probably their biggest success project, if we're being honest. And, we got some alluding that Billy was, hanging up the boots. I thought House of Black, who normally doesn't get a lot of story beats here, made the most of a very, kind of some improv with a pair of boots and made themselves feel pretty evil. And, I really enjoyed their presence in this entire segment. And I just know somewhere Andy heard the words Attitude Era and immediately just got a hard on and was just pumped for this match. I know Andy somewhere is just absolutely thrilled for this. All those old wrestling fans are probably eating this shit up. So, hey, it was before my time, and shit, Billy got me excited. I don't even know who Badass Billy Gunn is, guys. Yeah, roll your eyes, scoff, giggle, laugh, snood, turn your nose up on me, but shit, he made me care, so I know he made you dinosaurs care. So I'm all for it, man. I think Badass Billy Gunn and the Acclaimed is going to be a solid match. But I think the biggest thing about this is, like, where do you go with the titles? Like, do you put them on the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn? Because I mean, realistically here, Billy, I think the story that they were always trying to tell, and they're going to continue to tell, especially if they win the trios titles, is Billy is going to circle back around to his two young gentlemen, the Guns, who are now a part of Bullet Club Gold. And I think a great way to get those titles in Bullet Club Gold, being the trios titles, is to, kind of have a whoop in sheep's clothing with Billy Gunn. So I think this is going to be a great moment, though, Wembley. I'm not going to get too ahead of myself like some kind of mark, like you were just saying. But I think this is going to be a really fun match. And if the House of Black does lose the titles here, I don't think they have anything to be ashamed of. And at the end of the day, I think they've played their whole role in this really well. And I honestly, dare I say, I just said I didn't want the card to be oversaturated, but I think this is a good addition to the card in totality.
Yeah, so I'll just weigh in on this. Badass Billy Gunn was he was after Rockabilly, right? So I got into the WWF at the time, just as Billy was going from Rockabilly. He became Badass Billy Gunn and formed the New Age Outlaws with Road Dogg Jesse James. Following on from that, he became Mr. Ass. Then he became the one Billy Gunn. Then he was in a tag team with Chuck Palumbo, and that was a very different type of storyline. I don't know if you remember.
So is this like, if we're talking like anime terms, he's like Super Saiyan? This is like Super Saiyan 2 Billy Gunn.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I would say it's probably the most. I mean, from the Badass Billy Gunn to the Mr. Ass, there wasn't much of a difference, to be honest. It was probably the origins of DX, though, when he was like the Badass Billy Gunn. Because to begin with, the New Age Outlaws, they didn't join DX because Triple H and Shawn Michaels thought that they were doing great on their own and they didn't need DX. So they kind of.
Oh, Billy's delivery here! Whoa, guys! I know I sound like a arrogant little prick right now, but it's all in good fun because I gotta say, Billy's delivery here, 10 out of 10. He made this shit sound like a retirement match at WrestleMania. He got me riled up, man. Let's not get that lost in translation here.
Yeah,
continue.
Well, my final point on it, I think the House of Black will get these titles back. I think they will switch the titles on Sunday. I think they'll give Billy one great moment, and he'll be the man to pick up the victory. He'll hit a Famouser, and he will pick up the victory for this team. And to be honest, I don't mind that because he's had such a great career, and he wasn't allowed to go back to the WWF to do the DX reunion a few years ago, which kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths. And it was because he was doing such a great job in AEW, and WWE thought the show would be hijacked by "Scissor Me Daddy" chants. So to give Billy one big last moment on Sunday at Wembley, mate, as a long-term fan, I'm down for that. And I'm a big fan of elevating younger stars. But I think for one
like
night
Billy
only,
Gunn, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I give Billy his flowers. I'm all for that. 2 thumbs up.
Cool. And mate, I know we've gone a little bit long. We got the main event.
Oh no. I'm like Phil, bro. I got the time.
Well, we saw the Hardys, who some people have said online there shouldn't be nowhere near a main event in 2023. I thought this was a great, I don't know, I thought it was a great match. I thought Aussie Open was showcased, and we saw why they're in such a high-profile match at the weekend, albeit in the pre-show, but it is up against your 2 main eventers. I thought the Hardys did a great job in putting these guys over. This is probably the best Jeff's look as well since he's been back in AEW. Obviously Aussie Open picked up the win, and we saw MJF and Adam Cole come out at the end. They chased off Aussie Open, and then it looked like MJF was going to hit Adam Cole with the Dynamite Diamond Ring. They ended up hugging it out to end the show. Parker, what were your thoughts on the main event, and what were your thoughts on the closing images from Dynamite this week?
So I'm not going to lie to you. Be patient with me, and don't judge me for saying this, but
no, it's okay.
Every time Jeff Hardy gets into a ring in 2023, it's like I'm watching my drunk uncle show up at family events and hope that he just isn't plastered coming in, because it's gonna be like a bull in a china shop. I mean, So every time I'm watching Jeff wrestle, I'm like, all right, let's just hope this doesn't end with a meme. And let's just hope that everything ends okay. And, I'm getting tired of watching him go out sad. And with each match, thankfully, David, we're not in a situation where that's happening. I thought this was a great TV match. And I really respect Tony Khan for kind of easing us back into that relationship with Jeff Hardy instead of just propelling him off of tall things and being like, hey, isn't this that guy you guys loved in the early 2000s? Watch him jump off of this. Even though he's got some problems that he definitely needs to be dealing with. I think a lesser role for the Hardys was paramount and essential, and I'm glad to see Tony Khan stick to his guns. From a booking standpoint, the internet's never going to give him credit for that. They only want to talk about everything Tony's doing wrong, but this is one of the things that I think Tony is definitely doing right. I think things have been very chaotic, especially ever since the Cash Wheelers news dropped. And Tony's, of course, probably had a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. And, it just seems like he doesn't, from my, observations, it seems like Tony doesn't, have to learn the same lesson twice in a lot of regards. And it's nice to see kind of Jeff going a little bit of a redemption tour here. And, let's go to the other side of the ring, Aussie Open. Awesome to kind of see them do the vintage AEW thing of beating AEW talent on TV right before they have a match against a big AEW talent in a pay-per-view. Kind of familiarize the U.S. audience with these guys, and they just show us why they're so damn good. And I think this is going to be a fun thing we see in 0 Hour. I don't know. I really like the chances of their match ended up being a lot more than a lot of people are anticipating, and I thought this was fine as far as story beats for Adam Cole and MJF. I don't know about you. I really liked the whole video segment thing because it really added to the unpredictability of which way is the pendulum going to swing.
Yeah.
We both know that they're not coming out of this main event the same way they're going into it. There's just no way. Both men have already, verbalized how much this means to both of them individually. So just one of those situations where, it's either going to be you or me, brother, and it's no hard feelings. This has been a great friendship up to this point. But if the belt does change hands, there's no way that, MJF is the same person and their friendship stays intact prior, kayfabe or not. And if Adam Cole walks out without the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, then he fades into obscurity, which is why I think they have to go in the direction that they are going in. So, I mean, obviously, I think this was one last hug, really. It's kind of how I looked at the entire thing. And I thought it was fine. Sometimes, as I always say here on HCTB, when I'm doing these long-winded rants, less is more. So, I don't know. I thought it was okay. I thought it was a good way to cap off a pretty solid Dynamite. I mean, shit, I'm here talking about it, guys. I mean, good Lord. I've not been talking about Dynamite for the last month, and I thought this was a great go-home episode. And all right, there was one segment we didn't talk about that I did want to get your opinion on. Maybe you were going to talk about it, maybe you weren't. We kind of do these things off the balls, guys. So, how about FTR and Young Bucks segment? What did you think about it? No. And the whole reason I wanted to talk about this, of course, it all ties into our Lord and Savior Phil Brooks. I'm not going to lie to you. I really thought there was a lot left to be desired here. I thought this was the first time that Matt Jackson has opened his mouth on AEW programming in quite some time. And I thought it was a very lackluster promo by the Young Bucks. I mean, to allude to the fact that FTR would only pretty much be big because of them is honestly not only disingenuous, but kind of lazy in regards to narrative. And I think FTR's mission statement has always been, we're doing this for our legacy. We're doing this for our legacy. And then had to see the Bucks kind of come out, puff their chest, and basically say, we're already the greatest tag team ever, and we're EVPs. I'm just going to say what everybody's thinking. If they would have greenlit this, right, and you had FTR come back and say, oh, legacy? Yeah, EVPs? Yeah, that's really working out great for you. Let us take these titles back to the real A Show Collision with our boy Phil Brooks, and we'll make these things relevant again. I feel like this was a moment where if you really could have made this personal, and you really could have made this match feel like it had stakes. But I don't know, that felt like a very safe segment, and I almost feel like it kind of did the rubber match between these two great teams a disservice, and it just really makes you wonder what could have been if these two parties could just work together and get along. And man, they could have taken this thing to the next level. And I'm not one of those people who likes to complain about what it would have been, but when in Rome,
Yeah, and they didn't necessarily need to mention Punk by name. They could have just very thinly veiled, and then the fans would have known what they were alluding to. So yeah, to kind of mention the YouTube show, lazy or safe, or perhaps that's not what they wanted to do, and perhaps they had bigger plans for it, but ultimately they got turned down because of the alleged police matter. That I don't know what your thoughts on that, but I've never known such secrecy around an event. You hear so much in the news these days about the events and stuff and how they went down. I think if they wanted to tell us what happened, they could.
That's a really great point. I did see Cash's. You're referring to Cash Wheeler, correct?
Well, there's that as well. There's obviously what happened at All Out, the brawl out. You know, they've said that it can't be talked about because the police are involved and it's an investigation. I don't know. I think
the entire thing just feels ridiculous to me, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a bunch of grown ass men. All you want to make money. I mean, to me, it just all signs point to the Elite at this point. All signs point to the Young Bucks, and everything that they're doing on TV just feels so rehearsed, scripted. And it's funny because when Punk came out, and this is Punk bias aside, when Punk came out and called them counterfeit bucks and his, big pipe bomb he dropped when he came back from, when Collision debuted, they even put in their bio that would have been a t-shirt in 2018. I'm like, okay, well, if you can laugh at yourselves and you can laugh at this whole situation and there would have been a t-shirt for this and a t-shirt for that, you do realize that is what made the fans love you. That is what made the fans care about you, was that aspect of who you guys are. Yeah. And I was just absolutely like, I was just sitting there thinking after that promo, just what a waste. I mean, it almost looked like these two teams didn't even want to be in the same room. And I think with all things considered, I mean, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it, but I think that's a very distinct and real possibility here just due to what's going on with Phil. I mean, I really think you could have dived into this and made this a Collision versus Dynamite thing. I mean, it's been spoken on, it's been verbalized, and why not, exploit that and use it to build a match? Like you said, there are tasteful ways of doing it, but it's just like this entire thing just felt like, all right, there's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes. We're going to make this as safe as humanly possible. And man, what could have been if these two parties could have just squashed all of it.
Yeah, and they could have had a dig at Cash about the situation that has been reported in the wrestling media. I mean, it was there, wasn't it? It was on a plane.
Oh my God.
And they didn't have to kind of say.
Like, he could have just looked at Cash and be like, are you even going to be there?
Yeah, exactly. That would have been enough.
I mean, come on, man. Come on. It's right there.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder whose feelings are hurt, who has these big egos, who is so frail that you can't even say stuff like that. Like, I mean, if Christian could go out there and say, hey, Nick Wayne, you're dead dad, blah, 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 but these guys can't speak on that?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Come on. What have you got hanging between your legs? Because jeez, come on.
On that note, Parker, what was your rating for this week's show?
So I think I gave Collision a 7.5. I think, honestly, recency bias is going to take over me on this one. I'm probably going to give this one an 8. And I say that because it hit all of its story beats very well.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at the show and say it's kind of the antithesis, Jesus, learn how to talk, of, everything that makes AEW great, because there was just so much talking. But ultimately, this is a go-home show for one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time, if not the biggest wrestling event of all time. And there's going to be a lot of story beats. And I thought Renee being kind of the focal point of the show was excellent. And I think that everything was kind of formulated in a way where it was like, all right, into the ring, now back to Renee, and into the ring, now back to Renee. And I thought all of it flowed together so well. And, you had your one long TV match with Moxley and Ray, and I thought it was great. I thought the live audience got their money's worth. And just a great, huge main event segment to close out the show. Nothing extraordinary. But, I mean, I think this was a little bit of a return to form for Dynamite, and I give it an 8 out of 10.
Cool. Well, Collision this week was recorded after Dynamite. I've managed to avoid spoilers. We'll try and review that at the weekend. We'll try and, synchronize that.
We'll do our best, guys.
Say again, man. Say again?
I said we'll do our best. We'll do our best.
Yeah, we'll try, because obviously we want to try and get a prediction show out if we can maybe on Saturday. But for now, that's the Dynamite review. Thanks everyone for checking in and checking this out. But for now, we must bid you adieu.
Mwah.
Sorry, man. I thought you were going to hit it.
Oh, no, we're good. You're good.
Buckle down.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Buckle down and stay safe. Bang.